Call the meeting to order. I'd like to call on Councillor Zwaagstra to bring the opening, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the last 150 years, Canadians have elected their governments under the first-past-the-post system. Under first-past-the-post, the country is divided up into 338 constituencies, and voters select the candidate of their choice. The candidate who receives the most votes wins the seat, and the party with the most seats forms the government. It's a simple system, but not without its flaws. Among other things, it tends to create overinflated majorities, since parties regularly form majority governments even when they receive significantly less than half the popular vote, something that happened in the last two federal elections. Even more problematic, parties occasionally lose the popular vote and yet still win the most seats. However, while first-past-the-post is not perfect, it still has a lot going for it. In particular, it has given us one of the most stable democracies in the world. Because most elections result in majority governments, parties have the opportunity to govern without worrying about losing power with every vote in the House of Commons. If Canadians don't like what the government is doing, they can always vote it out in the next election. Unfortunately, it seems that the Prime Minister doesn't appreciate the virtues of our electoral system. Last year, he promised that 2015 would be the last election conducted under the first-past-the-post system. Since he won the election, the Prime Minister believes he has a mandate to completely change the way elections happen in this country. However, if first-past-the-post is such a flawed system, on what basis can the Prime Minister claim he has the right to impose a particular agenda on the country? The Liberals received 39.5% of the popular vote in the 2015 election and won a majority government. Even if we assume that every single person who voted Liberal wanted to get rid of first-past-the-post, that still leaves us with over 60% of Canadians who voted a different way. Last week, Democratic Institutions Minister Marian Monsef announced that a parliamentary committee of 10 MPs would consult with Canadians and develop a new electoral system in time for the next election. Interestingly, this committee will consist of 6 Liberals, 3 Conservatives, and 1 New Democrat. In other words, the Liberals will make up a majority of MPs on this committee and will be able to put in whatever reforms they ultimately choose. So let's see if we have this straight. The Liberals are using their majority in the House of Commons to create a parliamentary committee that will have a majority of Liberal MPs on it. The committee will, by majority vote, report back to the House of Commons with a recommended electoral system. Then the House of Commons will, by majority vote, adopt a new system. All this is possible because the Liberals received 39.5% of the vote in the last election. Changing the electoral system is completely unlike any other aspect of this government's or any government's legislative agenda. It's one thing for a government to put its stamp on social and economic policy. It's another thing entirely to change the way future governments are elected in this country. If the government is intent on such a fundamental change, it needs to hold a referendum on whatever system is proposed. That way, Canadians would have the final say in any change to our electoral system. Unfortunately, that call has so far been rejected. This does not bode well for the legitimacy of whatever system the government ends up proposing. This issue is important enough that every single Canadian deserves a direct say. The only way this will happen is if the government holds a nationwide referendum. Personally, I like first-past-the-post. It's not a perfect system. It's a system that has flaws. But when you have a system that has served the country for 150 years and made it possible to have stable governments and help us be one of the most admired countries in the world, I'm very reluctant to make any major changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Zwaagstra. We have the agenda in front of us. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda, please? Councillor Funk, second by Councillor Fair. Any discussion? Call for the question. All those in favour? Carried. There's no business arising from the... Okay, we have the minutes in front of us on page 1 from March 3rd. Can I have a motion, please, to approve the minutes? Councillor Penner, second by Councillor Funk. Any discussion? No. Call for the question. All those in favour? Carried. There's no business arising from the minutes. We're not quite at 7:35, so we'll move on to the accounts payable in the back of the book. Can I have a motion to approve the accounts payable, please? You've all had a chance to review this. Councillor Funk moves to approve. Second by Councillor Fair. All those in favour? Carried. We have Bylaw 2064, the Water and Wastewater Bylaw. This is first reading on page 19. Mr. Workentine.
Mr. Mayor and members of council, this bylaw is I wouldn't say common, but it is a regular item that is brought to Council's attention for review on a periodic basis. The city's current water and sewer rates have been in place for approximately 3.5 years. Every so often, the Public Utilities Board requires a rate review be completed by the City of Steinbach. At this point, the existing rates will expire at the end of 2016, and as required by the Public Utilities Board, the City of Steinbach must put forth a renewed proposal for sewer and water rates for the upcoming period. While the initial study has been completed, the proposed rates through this bylaw are also subject to Public Utilities Board approval and review. So with this document, what administration is recommending is that Council provide first reading to this bylaw, after which it will be submitted to the Public Utilities Board for review, and the Public Utilities Board will then advise as to what type of public consultation process would be required for as part of the ultimate approval of these new rates for 2017.
Thank you. How would Council like to proceed? Councillor Zwaagstra.
I'll make the motion we approve first reading.
Thank you. Second by Councillor Penner. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We periodically need to review and revise water and sewer rates. This is certainly one of those cases where we're, and basically we are required to charge the amount that would be adequate to basically keep the system operating and to pay for any future upgrades. And so this is it's a straightforward in and out. And so I think we need to give first reading, and the rates increases are approximately in the range of 3%. We'll submit it to the Public Utilities Board, and then they'll advise us how to proceed.
Thank you. Further discussion?
Nothing further.
Anything further from Council? Anything in closing? Council, obviously we've seen from other municipalities and even in our own history where these rates haven't been reviewed in quite some time, and we end up having large increases that are hard to absorb. Looking at this systematically and looking at it through a number of years, I think is an appropriate way to go about this. These are modest increases that will have to obviously go through public hearing process, and so look forward to going through that. So call for the question. All those in favour? Carried. Mr. Workington, this now goes to Public Utilities Board, or do we give second reading first?
Nope. This document will go to Public Utilities Board, and they will most likely advise a public consultation process, which is called a returnable date notice. Past history is there, while there has been questions about the proposed water and sewer rates in the past, the amount of public concern has been extremely minimal as a result of the city proposing reasonable increases. So rather than a public hearing, it's more of a paper notice and response type of process that the Public Utilities Board has recommended. I do expect that they will also recommend it in this process. However, that remains to be seen based on the review of the proposal.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. We have 9C, the excavator licenses, is on page 27. There's a motion there. Can I have someone move that, please? Councillor Fair, second by Councillor Penner. Any discussion? Call for the question. All those in favour? Carried. We'll now move to the public hearing, Variation V-2016-03. This is 18 Madison Place on page 5. I'm going to close the council meeting, open the public hearing. Mr. Workington, I'll ask you to introduce this, please.
This is application for variance V-2016-03 for property with civic address of 18 Madison Place. The owner and the applicant of the property are Wayne and Sandy Kaler. Purpose of this variance is twofold. Firstly, to allow a 12-foot 8-inch by 19-foot timber frame style roof to be constructed above an existing open deck 8 feet from the property line, where 25 feet are required in the RLD residential low density zone for a deck with a roof structure. And secondly, to allow an existing shed located 2.75 feet from the side property line, where 4 feet is required in the RLD residential low density zone. Notices as required by the Planning Act have been issued. There are no registered objections on file. Just a couple of points to note. While the initial advertisement indicated a proposed rear lot setback of 8 feet where 25 feet are required, The building plans of the applicant have been amended since that original request with the actual dimensions as noted in the material that's provided in the council package. On the sketch shown on page 17 actually indicates a rear lot of 9.16 feet where 25 feet are required. In both cases, however, this particular setback request does represent an extreme variance request, which is over 60% from the required setback. In addition, the eaves of the proposed covered deck will project up to an additional 2 feet beyond the structure. There have been some precedents that are listed in the material to provide council some additional background as to what past decisions have been for rear yard setback variance requests. While there have been no objections having been filed by the neighboring property owners, there does appear to be the possibility of significant impact resulting on the neighboring properties. And generally, the recommendation will actually follow two particular avenues because there's been two components within the variance application. For the particular shed, recommendation would be to approve. However, for the covered deck, with the extreme variance represented by that proposal, the recommendation is that council deny the application. Thank you.
We do have the applicant here today. Does the applicant wish to speak? Yes. If you could take the podium. and the way we do this, Mr. Kaler, is you have to state your name and your address, and then we go from there.
My name is Wayne Kaler, representing Sandy Kaler, 18 Madison Place.
All right. Go ahead.
I have some pictures I'd like to show you. That is actually pretty neat. I was looking at that, how that was all shown on there. And the concrete deck, as you see it, this will show you more, a better view from the back of how far, or give you a better idea rather than aerial. So I'll hand these out to John. I can give you one. Can bring you guys one. Also, at the same time, I would like to provide you with a letter provided from the only neighbor that we feel what we know is impacted, which would be the neighbor right behind us.
I'll share it with the rest here.
Well, there's lots of these. So
okay.
I made 8 copies of these. Those others are lots. So this particular neighbor is the only one that is impacted. Everybody else is the side view, recessed side view. Anybody else that would even view it would be through that swale, the large swale on the right. The neighbor to the east would not see it. The neighbor to the west would minimally see it. And the only neighbor that would see it would be Dale and Beth behind, who I provided that letter. So the colored pictures may provide a little more of a, if you look at the end of the deck, basically that is where the roof would end. I believe it goes about another foot for the timber frame posts. It's not an enclosed structure. It's only a continuation of the peaked roof. And it came around now because we were sorry in 2000 when we built, being in the middle of a field, that we didn't add at that time. And stated to ourselves that the day will come and we'll need roofing, which is now, because everybody got hammered with hail in that whole area. So now is the time, if we're going to do it, because the roof line will be followed and the shingles will be replaced to match. You know, the whole roof's done at one time. Fascia, eaves, trough. And it's just a continuation of the peak to provide some shade.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Any questions? Seeing none, anything further to add?
No, nothing except if you all get a chance to view the color pictures, I think they're helpful.
Good. We've all had a chance to see those now.
Good.
Thank you. All right, is there anyone here wishing to object to this file? Anyone here wishing to object? Anyone wishing to object? Seeing none, I'll close the council meeting, or close the public hearing and open the council meeting. Council, how would you like to proceed? Councillor Penner?
Move to approve?
Thank you. Second by?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Although the variance request in this case is extreme insofar as it is very different from what has been allowed in variation requests in the past, I would say that this situation, this circumstance, to me appears to have no negative impact for the application for the variation. And I would like to think that common sense would apply in this case, that we would see that, first of all, there is no real structure, there's only a roof. It's a timber frame roof structure to cover an existing patio. The patio is already there. I see no negative impact from building that over the existing deck. I was at the site today and actually looked at the physical situation. It appeared to have no negative impact for any neighbors. So I would move approval.
Thank you. Anything further?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to echo all the comments of Councillor Peter, but I was there myself on Friday, and I asked where the poles would be. So I went to the poles, stood there, and I took sight lines with my vision, and I realized that the neighbors can't see. The neighbors to the east and the west couldn't see the poles, like could not see. I was hugely concerned with the neighbor, Dale Robinson, that he would be in favor of it because he's going to see it the most. If anyone, he'll walk out his door and see it. And according to this letter, he's in favor of it. It's not changing very much of the yard because the deck is already there. They're not building anything new. They're just adding to the roof line. And I think that the problem here is when we get into these unique kind of lots, right? If everyone had a rectangular lot, we would all be in compliance. But the fact is that these rectangular lots, to make their streets with cul-de-sacs and nice corners and that, we have these challenges. And if we're not going, I want to stay true to the bylaw and our zoning codes, but in reality, we have to look at each of these as one-offs, as unique. And in this situation, I don't see any adverse effects. So that's why I'm going to support the motion.
Thank you. Anything further? Councillor Fair?
I have a question of administration. Mr. Workington made through you, Mr. Mayor, made a comment about that it would negatively affect it even though it wasn't visible. Can you expound on that, please? In what way?
The comment in my recommendation was that the rear yard of the with the proposed structure being adjacent to the rear yard of the neighboring property, it appears that it could result in a significant impact. Again, it was not noted that there was particular concerns as noted on file. I was not certain whether or not there would be representations at this public hearing, but in keeping with the principles of the zoning that is in place throughout the city and to be consistent with the rear yard setbacks that are applicable across the city in all cases, it is important that when policy documents are set, that the policy is as much as possible maintained to maintain consistency throughout the city. With respect to an additional review of all similar pie-shaped lots in the neighborhood, there were 2 minor variances that were granted in comparative properties in the neighborhood for other pie-shaped lots, and only 1 major variance that was subject to a councillor review in the area, and in that case, a rear yard setback of 20 feet was permitted where 25 were required. In respect of all the variance applications and the type of building configurations that are placed within pie lots in the neighborhood, because this was such an extreme variance, that's where the concern of administration lay.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions?
Comment?
No, that's fine. Fine. Okay. Anything further from council? Anything in closing?
Yes, I think it's important to note that while we do have certain things that we do ask when we have variations and when we have applications for decks and sheds and things like that, Councillor Funk is correct. There are some lots that simply do not allow for a lot of creativity as far as allowing for decks and shelters and things like that, and I think we need to use common sense. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, council. Obviously, we see that this is not a rectangular lot. This is a pie-shaped lot. As administration has pointed out, there have been variations in the past, not to this extreme, but we do see that this is a unique situation to try and it's a fairly large home on a lot that has limitations when it comes to the pie-shaped lot. We also have a bylaw that we do want to enforce and protect, which is good, because we want to be consistent. At the same time, we also have the variation process that's available to us as we look at these unique situations. And so I'm comfortable supporting the motion that we allow for the variation to move forward, both variations to move forward. So we have talked mostly about the deck, but we are also talking about the shed as well. Call for the question. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. You can now do your roof.
Thank you.
All right, we have no further delegations, reports and recommendations from the city manager. We have 9D. We have the accounts receivable transfer of taxes on page 31. Mr. Workentine, anything further to add?
No, other than generally these are receivables for services or work done on particular private property that remain unpaid, and under the provisions of the Municipal Act they may be transferred to the tax account and collected as normal realty taxes. Recommendation is that council approve.
Okay, thank you. There is that one large one. That seems a little out of the ordinary. Is there any comment on that, or you don't want to?
Which one in particular? That roll 17300?
Yes.
That actually results from, there's a detailed list in the top half of that schedule. I believe it's 5 separate invoices over a period of time that remained unpaid. So cumulatively, yes, it is a more significant amount.
Okay. Any further questions? How would council like to proceed? Councillor Zwaagstra.
I'll make a motion that we transfer that to taxes as per the motion.
Okay, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Funk, go ahead.
Let's do it.
Okay, anything further from council? Call for the question. All those in favor? Carried. For businesses, if only we could do it this way, eh? Where we just send our arrears to someone's tax bill. We have the building permits on page 32. Council, we had a very good month when it came to the previous month. Obviously, there's some that are straggling, and we have a number that are still waiting to move forward that are in the pipe. So it's very good. We're year to date at $12 million. It's a good start to the year. There's a motion on the bottom of that page. Can I have someone move that, please? Councillor Fair, seconded by Councillor Funk. Any discussion? Call for the question. All those in favor? Carried. 9F, the New Building Canada Fund. We did request information. This is on page 33. Mr. Workentine, do you have anything to it? I know you gave us a lot of information here. Do you have anything further to add? Or in summary?
Well, I think there's a lot of information. I don't think there's anything to add. Perhaps I could summarize the details that are there and point out the key parts that I believe could be significant to the city of Steinbach. Excuse me. In connection with Council's recent decision to proceed with the construction, or at least the development of a performing arts center in the city of Steinbach. Probably of importance to note is there may be eligibility for the city of Steinbach to pursue federal funding under the New Building Canada Fund. There is a special component of the Building Canada Fund that actually was announced a number of years ago, but is being continued by the current Liberal government, which is of particular interest to the city of Steinbach because it pertains to small communities with populations of 100,000 or less. That's a component or a group that the city of Steinbach will fall into. With the more recent announcement of the federal government's budget, it did reiterate its commitment to follow through with the administration of this Building Canada Fund. If Council would like to refer to page 39 on the top of the page, it does highlight how it intends to do that, essentially saying government will implement a short-term Phase 1 plan to immediately invest in the infrastructure Canadians need to modernize and rehabilitate public transit, water and wastewater systems, and basically essential infrastructure. And in that phase, Phase 1, it focuses primarily on programs over the next 2 years. I think of key interest to the city of Steinbach will be the next paragraph, which refers to Phase 2, where the intent is a more modern, cleaner economy, a more inclusive society, and an economy better positioned to capitalize on the potential of global trade. Essentially what I've deduced from the information that's provided is I believe the intent of the federal government is to broaden the scope of this Building Canada funding, and that is also highlighted more on information that is provided on page 43, which there is a particular component within that program which is entitled Investing in Cultural and Recreational Infrastructure. Essentially, if Council wants to refer to the second paragraph, it goes on to say, to support these important parts of our communities, Budget 2016 proposes to invest just over $168 million over 2 years, starting in the 2016-17 fiscal year, in the Canada Cultural Spaces Fund. And this fund will support the renovation and construction of arts and heritage facilities. So, following through with that, the following document is actually some of the program information related to that Canada Cultural Spaces Fund, and some of the requirements that the federal government would expect from communities such as the city of Steinbach applying for grant funding. This appears to be a significant increase in the level of funding that has been provided previously, and as I understand is the federal government is working towards completing the final details of that program. And having discussed the details of this program with federal government representatives, we do expect that this additional information should be available in the next 3 to 4 weeks. And at that point, then we would proceed to evaluate how the city could best make that request for funding.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from Council? Councillor Zwaagstra?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that we've certainly made it clear that in terms of our recreation planning and the Performing Arts Centre, we clearly need support from other levels of government, and there certainly is an opportunity to make the application under this plan here. I note on page 48 where it describes the eligibility requirements and the eligible projects, where it says that eligible projects are construction and renovation projects, specialized equipment purchases related to cultural infrastructure projects intended for professional arts and or heritage activities. So this fits very closely with the type of project that we are looking at, and so we need to obviously get as much as possible from other levels of government, and so if we were able to pursue this and receive that support, that would obviously make it much easier for us to proceed and also reduce the burden that's specifically on Steinbach taxpayers. So, you know, certainly my comment is that I think it makes sense to make the application. That the fund does seem like it fits quite well with our project.
Okay. Thank you. Further comments? Councillor Petter?
Yes, I would reiterate what Councillor Zwaagstra also said, and just express the view that this is a great opportunity for us. This is something that does not occur every so often, and governments do change and priorities do change. This is now available, and I think it's very opportune time for us to take advantage of it.
Thank you. Further discussion? Mr. Warkentine, what else, obviously you're getting ready to, as we get more details from this program, you're going to be getting ready to make an application because Council said that the Performing Arts Centre is a priority, their first priority. What do you need or what actions are you taking right now to move that forward so that we can be at the queue quickly?
At this point, administration is pursuing options as far as consultants that, architectural consultants that we feel might be able to help the city move the project forward. At this point, meetings have been held and we are expecting proposals to be provided. And as that proceeds and decisions are made as to how best to move forward, there will be some both budgetary and proposed project information that will be a requirement as part of these applications. And once we better understand exactly what the federal government agencies are looking for, then we will tailor that information accordingly so that the city can make the best application that it can.
Thank you. Anything further from Council? Council, obviously, this is good information. We see clearly that this fund actually fits very well with the Performing Arts Centre that we've made a priority moving forward. So I want to encourage administration to continue their work on those details so that we can find a partner in other levels of government. We have to have partners for this to proceed, and so this seems to be a window that may be available to us. That's good. Thank you for the information. All right, questions of Council. Any questions of Council? Councillor Funk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. This is not a question, but I've been asked by my neighborhood. The neighborhood, there'd be a neighborhood party at Choate Park, and they wanted me to invite all of Council and the Mayor. The party's being held on May 23rd at 4:30. It's a potluck, so bring a dish to feed yourself or a salty snack or dessert. There's two reasons for this party. It's a get to know your neighbor party. It's going to happen at the Choate Park. You just enter through 3rd Street. But the big reason is they're on the books. Choate Park's on the books for 2017 to get the playground infrastructure renewal. And so what they want to do as a community now or a neighborhood is raise funds so that they can enhance the playground they'll be getting. So I think it's a good cause, and we've had a couple of meetings that I've been able to attend with them. They're great people. They've got so much heart and vision for their backyard park, and so I will attend, and I'm just throwing the invitation out for anyone who can.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that. That's good. Any other questions of Council? All right. Actually, I have a question for Council, and that is one of the challenges that we've seen is seniors housing over the last number of years. I know we've taken some initiatives that we had an initiative that we renewed twice or for a second time in regards to seniors housing and moving that forward. It was successful. We had applications both times, and I'm just wondering if Council. We do continue to have seniors housing issues in the city that we want to see additional opportunities for people to find homes in their senior years. Just wondering if Council would like to have administration pursue this further to look at possibly renewing or altering slightly, but looking at the opportunity to move that forward. Yeah, there's a general feeling. Okay, then I'll work with administration to look at what we have done in the past, what we can do in the future, so that we can certainly fit it into the budget, but also promote additional seniors housing as we move forward. Yeah. All right, we have correspondence number 11 from Clear Spring Green. This is on page 50, or a resident on Clear Spring Green. This is on page 58. Maybe before, we can't take this as information, but I think it deserves a little more than that. And Mr. Workentine, do you have any comments in regards to, obviously, we're planning to hard surface Old Tom, and that's taking place. There are some concerns. We have heard it about speeding, never mind with the pavement, but without the pavement even. Any comments on that, or what has administration undertaken?
Do you want me to comment on the speeding? I'd rather not.
Only if you know who it was.
Yeah. I guess just for some background, the initiative for Boundary Roads program and Old Tom Road in particular has been discussed for some time. In anticipation of this project being added to the 2016 capital program, administration actually did initiate a traffic count to be completed on Old Tom Road in the fall of 2015 in anticipation of, well, first off wanting to know what the actual traffic count was and whether or not the proposed works were actually going to impact that traffic count. Regardless of the reasoning, the traffic count was done. That has been taken by the city's engineering department as additional information in evaluating what traffic control measures, if any, are to be recommended along with the proposed asphalt surfacing of that roadway in 2016. At this point, there is not a confirmed recommendation or analysis completed. However, we do expect that will be completed sometime during the summer. And depending on what the findings of that review are, if there are recommendations for any traffic control devices or signage or that kind of thing, that recommendation would be brought before council sometime late summer, early fall.
So just a clarification, so is this after it gets hard service that you'd expect or expect the change to occur, or?
At this point, there's a number of other requests for traffic control devices that are pending that have been received directly from administration. We're just assembling a number of those in kind of in a package for a full package to be presented by council, but we expect sometime this summer that at least be provided to council for review and consideration.
Okay, I'll ask one more time though. So is this before or after it gets hard surfaced?
At this point, I believe it would be shortly after.
Okay. Council, that's some very good information, I think, and so we know that they're taking action. Is there any further action we wish them to take or comments?
Just to
Councillor
confirm that we will be replying to them and letting them know of the process.
Okay. Very good. We will have administration do that. So that's good. Thank you. All right. One final thing, and something that I've forgotten. I'd like a motion to excuse our two members that aren't here. One had a previous commitment, and another one was under the weather. So, Councillor Funk, second by Councillor Penner. Any discussion? All those in favour? Thank you. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Fair, Councillor Funk, all those in favour? Carried. Thank you.